Hi, everyone. I'm Trisha Bell,
Hi, I'm Georgia Young.
and welcome to CTE Talk, the podcast where we talk all about CTE, concussion culture in sport, and life as a family member.
Every Monday, we will be joined by guests to shed light on the neurological disease, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Join us on our mission to raise awareness and educate others.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, CTE Talk. Today, we are joined by Bill Benedict, and he's going to be talking to us about his son and his CTE story.
Thank
Hi,
you,
Bill.
Trisha. Thank you, Georgia. It's so nice to be with you. And as I said before we began, I appreciate all that you're doing. My name is Bill Benedict. I live in a little town outside of Buffalo, New York. And my son, Matthew, took his own life on July 1st of 2019. It totally came unexpected to us. Matt had been experiencing some emotional problems, some mental health problems for probably about 4 or 5 years. And I honestly thought that he had turned the corner and that he was making progress towards overcoming the issues that he had. And obviously that was not the case, but there's no mental health or emotional history in either my family or my wife's family. And it was kind of difficult for us to understand what was happening. Matt had played football. He played hockey. He played lacrosse from the time he was a little boy. I started him in hockey when he was 3 years old. And even then, you wouldn't think that little kids would bang their head, but he wore a helmet, but at the same time, they fall, they hit the boards, they hit the ice. And so even from an early childhood, Matt experienced rattling of that brain or hitting his head.
As many young boys do, sorry to interrupt, but many young boys do, they're just rough and tumble.
In fact, Matt, his first concussion that we really know of, he was probably around 4 or maybe a little older than that. And our older son didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't intentional, but they were at a friend's house a friend of ours coached baseball, and he had a t-ball tee that our older son put a baseball on and told Matt, get back. And he hit the baseball off the tee, and it caught Matt right in the eye socket.
Ooh.
And
That'll hurt.
So yes, I mean, it hit a little crack there, but he actually had the I guess the worst problem was that it really was a concussion. And then so anyway, I guess that's just knowing that it started at such a young age for Matt.
And you said obviously that everything kind of happened unexpectedly. Was there any signs or symptoms that he was showing that kind of relate to classic CTE symptoms that we discussed that kind of he was demonstrating?
Yes. I mean, looking back at it now, of course, they're so clear to me. But back then they really weren't. Matt, like as I said, Matt had played football, he played hockey, he played lacrosse throughout early growing up, and then of course through high school. And then he went on, he played Division III college football. And Matt, I don't want to brag, but like a lot of the other CTE victims, was quite good and played a lot, especially in high school. He never left the field. I mean, he was in a lot of ways the team. His team was not very good, and they really needed Matt. So, I mean, Matt would sell out his body to help the team. I mean, he was really competitive, wanted to win. And so he went on to play Division III college football. And in his junior season, we know that he actually did get knocked out in a game, but he never left the field. You know, looking back on it now, and we can watch the film, we see where it happened. He went to tackle a quarterback. He actually got a knee to the forehead, and it took him a little bit to get up, and he did get up and continued to play. And then a few plays later, he was hit again, and that day, it just so happened that our older son was at the game. He didn't get a chance to watch Matt play, and that was the only time that he saw Matt play in college. They were both college athletes. So our older son, Michael, played hockey, and that weekend he had an off weekend, so he was able to go watch Matt. And then afterwards, later on that night, they hung out together, and I know Matt confided in Michael and told Michael that he actually did get, knocked out. But the effects of that continued on. We didn't know it until about a month or month and a half later, that Matt was kind of in a funk, for lack of a better word. He had a hard time sleeping, an extremely hard time concentrating. He couldn't read without getting headaches, had a hard time writing. And he was a very good student, and had a hard time actually even getting up and going to class. And then he was embarrassed. So because he was embarrassed by that, he tried to basically hide from people. He became very introverted. And then even to his friends, he tried to brush it off like everything was okay, but it really wasn't. And then when we found out about it, my wife took him to a neurologist and a concussion specialist, and they basically diagnosed Matt with post-concussive syndrome. And I'm sure you both know what that is, but it kind of, you continue to have the symptoms of a concussion a lot longer than it should actually be. And so we just kind of took the word of the doctors that in time things would get better. And in a way they did, or at least maybe Matt didn't lead on that he was still having trouble. So that was his junior year. And then he was held out because it was confirmed that he did have a concussion. So he went through the normal concussion protocol. The school was real good about making sure that he didn't get back in and start practicing, it was off season, but they were doing off season workouts and things like that. So Matt was held out of that, and I know it bothered him. He had just been named team captain, and he thought, hey, how can I be the captain if I'm not showing the rest of the team that I'm doing all the work? And then so when he finally got back, it was clear to get back into practice. I know he tried to make up for lost time probably and jumped in, head first. And then we didn't really fully know that he was still having problems, but he continued to have problems probably from that point on. and then went back for his senior year, his last year, and had a great season. His junior year, he had a great season. His senior year, he had a great season. At least we thought, but we didn't know that he was still experiencing problems. And then goes through the football season, and towards the end of the season, we had a couple of deaths in our family. My brother-in-law passed away unexpectedly, and a couple months later, my mother passed away. And we didn't realize this, but Matt later on had written about that he really didn't feel any emotion in both of those deaths. And he was close to both. My brother-in-law was a favorite of Matt's, and then he was pretty close to my mother, and that wasn't like Matt. Matt normally was very loving, and so again, we didn't know the full extent of what was happening with these symptoms. And then so he graduates from, I'm moving along here, he graduates from college, and really smart kid, so he graduates magna cum laude, gets a couple awards, and he receives a big award from the school for football or athletics. And even then he just didn't really it was a big deal. It was a big deal to us, at least we thought. And he just brushed it off, like, he just didn't understand how great it was, or he just didn't show, I don't want to say he didn't appreciate it, but he just, I guess he just didn't understand kind of how important it was. And after he graduated, he wrote this, I don't know if it was really a blog, but he wrote this, for lack of better words, I guess, he wrote this blog, and he posted it on Facebook, and in it, he had written that he had a couple bouts with depression, and during that time, he actually did try to commit suicide. And when we read that, like, we just couldn't believe that was our little boy. Well, we couldn't. It was hard for us to, I guess, comprehend what he was feeling and how he felt. And so he comes back home after graduation, and he didn't have a job. He didn't really have any direction. And I know he was feeling lost. I mean, you kind of start school, you go to first grade, you move on, after eighth grade, it's expected you go to high school. And after high school, a lot of times it's expected you go to college, you go to the military, you get a job, whatever in society. And so that was all laid out for most kids. And then when Matt graduated from college, it's like, okay, now what? And a lot of his friends had done internships, so they already had jobs. And Matt didn't. And so he came home and didn't really know what to do. He started working a little bit, and then he started coaching football. And then he actually started substitute teaching, which kind of gave him a little direction. And again, he just didn't know what to do. And he decided that he was going to go to law school. So he takes the LSAT, the exam, and we're not lawyers, so we didn't know how well he had scored, but he scored really high. And even then, we had asked, hey, how'd you do on your exam? And I did okay. Well, come to find out, he actually did really well. And so he goes to law school. And the first semester that he went to law school, he hits it out of the park. He had like a 3.8 GPA. And then the second semester, he just couldn't complete because he was having emotional problems. He couldn't sleep, couldn't write, couldn't read, had a hard time concentrating. He had headaches. And so he was living with us at the time and decided he'd withdraw. So he withdrew, and then the summer rolled around, and again, he didn't really know what to do. So picks up a job and he just starts living life and decides towards the end of the summer that he's feeling better and that he might like to go back to school. So he starts again, goes back. And same thing, he did really well in that semester. And then the second semester, he had to withdraw, just like he had done before. And my wife and I are thinking, what's going on here? Like, is it, could it be seasonal? He was actually started to see a psychologist, and the psychologist was even having a hard time trying to pinpoint what was going on. He basically told Matt that he was an anomaly, that he just couldn't really figure out. He kind of exhibited bipolar symptoms, but yet the doctor couldn't diagnose him with.
Didn't quite fit.
It, yes. And but he was having issues. He was definitely having problems. So long story is he withdraws again. And just like in the past, the summer rolls around, and as the summer progressed, he started to feel better. And or at least it appeared as if things were getting better. And then towards the end of that year, he came to me. We had moved. Things in life. We had sold our house. Decided kids were gone. We have 4 kids. Kids were all moved out, and we kind of thought, hey, we'll downsize. So we sold our house. We built a new house, or we didn't build it, but had a new home built, and a little bit smaller home. And so we moved, and Matt was living with us, and so we discussed it with Matt, and so we end up moving into our new house, and then Matt was still didn't really have a lot of direction, didn't really know what he wanted to do. And I remember vividly him coming to me and telling me that he had gone and talked to the dean at the law school and that they would take him back. And I was thrilled. I thought, oh, this is great. He's finally figured things out. And then he told me, he said that he wanted to go back, except that he wanted to move out. He wanted to get his own place. And even then I thought, hey, that's great. He's taking a step towards maturity. And he kind of explained that it was kind of a hassle to drive back and forth, and after going to school, and I get it. I fully understood. And so he told me that he wanted to move out and get his own place, and I was supportive, and I thought, hey, that's great. And then he told me that he didn't have a lot of money, which I didn't expect that he did. He had been a couple different jobs, and then he was actually he was coaching, he coached football, and then he coached hockey, and he was coaching lacrosse, at his high school. And, you get paid a little bit, but it's not like a job. And so he didn't have a lot of money. So I remember, him telling me, and I said, do you need some money? And so I actually told him I'd help him. So I gave him the money for him to get his own place. And looking back on it now, I mean, that is really a regret that I have. But I mean, life's full of regrets. And unfortunately, I mean, that's one that I have. And I remember my wife, my wife wasn't home at the time we had this discussion. We stood in our kitchen, and it was like, it truly was a very mature discussion, or, he justified everything that he talked about. And I thought, wow, and I remember even, I mean, this is how naive I was, or how bad I feel about it. But I remember I told him that I didn't know a lot about depression and mental health. I was honest, and I said, I don't know a lot about it, but I'm really proud of the way that you're handling things. Because to me, I thought that he was. I didn't realize that he really wasn't. He was just hiding it. So he had asked, we discussed him moving out. I told him I'd give him money to get an apartment, help him out. And then I remember when my wife came home, and I told my wife, and I was kind of proud of the fact that we had this man-to-man discussion about him moving out. And I remember my wife saying she couldn't believe that I would agree to it and that I would actually help him. And I remember not really arguing with my wife, but kind of saying, I mean, he's 25 years old, like he certainly can live on his own. And my wife was really worried about his mental state or his emotional state. And, and my wife had done a lot of research into CTE. My wife was the one that taking him to the doctors. My wife was really more clued in than I was. And I remember I would spend time with Matt, a lot of time with Matt. And I know my wife was happy that I was doing that. And I never treated Matt any differently. I know that he lost some friends. I know that people withdrew from being with him because he was a little bit different and he was acting a little differently. But I never did. And I know my wife was thrilled that I didn't treat him any differently. But certainly my wife was not happy that I was kind of helping him move out. But so he moved out at the end of the year, went back to school in January, and then starts going to school. Things are going really well. He meets a girlfriend, or he meets a girl, and they start dating, and her family loved Matt. We loved her. Like it was they were a cute couple. I thought everything was going in the right direction. He's doing really well in school, and then juggling having a relationship with his girlfriend. And, we really thought that he was handling everything well. And then that was January when he went back to school. And then towards the end of the semester, he interviews for a summer internship, and I remember how excited he was that he received an internship at a local law firm. And so he finished in May his semester for law school, and then started in the summer his internship. And at the same time, he was taking a couple classes because he had dropped out a couple times, so he was a little behind. And so he thought that summer he would try to so he was taking 2 classes besides working at this at the firm. And it was end of June. We were talking about doing something for 4th of July as a family. So we live outside of Buffalo, New York. It's real close to Canada. We thought, hey, we'll go up to Georgian Bay up in Canada. So my wife rented a house that we were going to go, and Matt and his girlfriend were going to go with us. Our younger daughter had been away at school, and then so she had come home. So she was going to join us, and so we were really looking forward to getting away for the 4th. And then July 1st, Matt goes to work just like any other Monday morning. Got up, goes to work. He packs a lunch. We didn't know it at the time, but goes to work, walks in around 7:30, and everyone at the firm loved him. They said how, he was really pleasant, well dressed, he was well put together, and shows up, was smiling, was talking to people like he normally, he's really pleasant, was talking to people. And then they had the interns working on the 17th floor at that time. And so Matt shows up to work. He talks it up with a couple other people, and then it's time to get to the office. So he goes to the 17th floor, whatever office he was working in, and closed the door and scribbled a note to us real quick, scribbled a note to his girlfriend, and then he jumped out the window. And so by 8 o'clock, he was dead. He just checked out.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Don't be sorry.
So we really don't know if something triggered it. We don't know if someone said something to him. We don't know. The managing partner of the firm has been great to us. The law firm has been great to our family. And I spoke to him the day that Matt died, and then we continue to keep in touch. And there weren't any emails that would have set him off. At least that's what we've been told. That morning, about 7 o'clock, my wife texted Matt, and when Ann had texted him, she just asked, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he said, "I'm doing okay. I just have a couple more classes to go." And he was really looking forward to getting away for the 4th of July. And then I do know from his girlfriend that he had a couple papers due. One was due Monday, and I guess Monday he was taking night classes. working during the day and then going to school at night. And then so the one paper was due Monday, another one I think was due Tuesday, or even Wednesday. I'm not quite sure, but I thought, well, maybe he was having a hard time handling the work or whatever. And the law firm said he was doing outstanding work as far as in fact, they were going to hire him. They had it in their mind that they wanted to offer him a job when he was done. And then the dean and his professor had come to Matt's wake and said he was getting an A in both classes that he was taking, that he was doing outstanding work. So, it wasn't, I would think that he might have I'm hoping that he would have understood that things were okay, but we don't know that. And we didn't know that he had packed a lunch. I mean, not to get too graphic, but the day he died, the Buffalo police had called my wife. My wife works as a professor at a community college, and she had a summer class she was teaching. And she said that this phone number just kept calling while she was in class. She was actually teaching, and she just kept looking at it, and she's thinking to herself, why does this number keep calling me? And so she finally stepped out. She told the students, I just need to step out and find out what's going on. So she called, and it was the Buffalo police, a detective, and I don't know the whole conversation, but basically had told her that Matt had died and how he had died. And then so she called me. I work out of my home. In fact, I'm sitting in the same chair I was sitting in sitting at the same desk the day that Ann called me to let me know. And but as far as the lunch, the day he died, they gave us his car keys and his wallet and his watch and some belongings. But because it was a suicide, they held on to his laptop. He had a backpack at work, and I don't know. I'm not law enforcement, so I don't know what they have to do, but they held on to that for a couple of weeks. And then that same detective, they came to the house the day that Matt died to return some things. And then a couple of weeks later, detective called me and said that they would return Matt's backpack. And I remember it vividly. It was a Saturday morning. And fortunately, our other kids were not around. And he said that they would come to the house, and came, and they gave me the backpack. And I even invited him in. I said, do you want to come in? And he said, no, we just want to return this. And I had to sign, that I had received his personal belongings. And Ann was with me when I got it. And first thing I did, I put it up on our counter, and I opened it up, and there were pens and pencils and chapstick, in one pocket. And then I look in another pocket, and, it was a highlighter. And then there were some books and a notebook that he had written some things for school. And then I look, and there's a lunch, and I open it up, and there's peanut butter and jelly sandwich and, chips. And I looked at Ann, and I said, who in their right mind would pack a lunch if they're going to kill themselves? And right away, Ann said, Billy, he wasn't in his right mind. And
Exactly.
so and then shortly after, Matt died, he died on Monday, and 4th of July was coming, and so we had to make arrangements for his wake and all that stuff. And so we went to his apartment, Ann and I really thought maybe I'd get some clues. So I remember opening the door to his apartment. You know, my hand was shaking, Ann was holding on to me. We opened the door and we go in there, and, you know, I really thought, well, maybe I'll find drugs. Maybe I'll find some reason. And there were more pizza boxes and, you know, pizza crust and pop bottles, empty pop bottles, and, you know, some beer cans, and I mean, normal stuff, you know, so there was no clue. When we got to his car, the same thing. You know, I thought maybe I would find something, and there wasn't. And I didn't realize what he was going through or how serious it was. And then I think I had alluded to both of you that Ann and I attended the CLF huddle in 2020, and Matt had died in July, and then we went to the CLF family huddle in February. And that really was helpful for me, or helpful to me. Of course, Chris Nowinski's there, and a lot of the doctors, Dr. Ann McKee, Dr. Cantu, you know, I mean, it was, but Dr. Bob Stern was there, and he gave a presentation, and I was never good at science in school. It was never one of my favorite subjects. And I just remember sitting there, and it was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is way over my head, the things that he was talking about. And then right after, we had a break. And so I go to the men's room, and as I'm walking out of the men's room, who's walking in the men's room but Bob Stern? And he says, how do you like it? And we get talking about the whole huddle, or, you know, and not so much his presentation, but the huddle. And I start talking about that I'm starting to understand that it was all the concussions that Matt had that really caused the issues. And he grabbed me. He literally put his arms around me, my shoulders, and he looks right in my eyes, and he says, Bill, you're not getting it. It's not the concussions. It's all the subconcussive hits that he would have taken throughout his whole lifetime. And then I remember asking him, or saying to him, I said, I just don't understand. You know, like, Matt's cognitive ability didn't seem to diminish at all. And he said Matt was really young, and it was just going to be a matter of time before things would have gotten worse. And it just was like this light bulb that went off in my head, that it's like, oh my gosh, I finally get it. And looking back on it, I mean, Matt never, I mean, from the time he was a little boy, all the times that he would have taken hits to the head, even just playing in the backyard, you know, like with Michael, his older brother, or neighborhood kids, or, I mean, all the times that he would have been hit, that brain rattling around. And I don't know,
That's the thing that even myself, when I first heard that, you know, our brain, I mean, we all know our brain is soft and jelly-like, and we all know the inside of our skull is got all these craggy points, but you never think about, you know, the fact that damage can be done very easily. and helmets don't really do much to mitigate that damage. And of
No,
course, that's what we're trying to bring awareness to. But even when I first heard it, I mean, I have a degree in psychology, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I guess a helmet wouldn't help the brain in that situation. I couldn't believe I never saw it that way before.
no. And unfortunately, we were not able to have Matt's brain analyzed or tested. We wanted to. I mean, the day that he died was sorry for getting emotional.
Take your time. You've told the story so beautifully, and I think the emotion just shows how raw this experience is. And I mean, anyone who goes through it understands it, but I mean, I just don't think people can even fathom what this experience is like for people, whether it's the person who's actually really suffering with the symptoms or the family members around them. Especially in your situation where there really wasn't direct signs. And I think that's is really difficult. We can be given a list of symptoms and all of that, but it's really hard to put two and two together, especially when there's still such a lack of kind of resources and information available. But never say sorry for getting emotional. We all understand how difficult it is, and we just appreciate how open and honest you've been and are with sharing.
Oh, well, thank
today.
you. I don't sugarcoat anything. I just keep it real, and it's just the day he died. I met Anne at school, and to make matters worse for her, our daughter Elizabeth, our youngest, was actually in Anne's office. She was doing some work, schoolwork at the time. And so she was in Anne's office while Anne was actually teaching. And so I met Anne, and of course, Lizzie was there because Anne had to tell Lizzie. And I just, at that point when we met, we were told that we would have to go identify Matt's body, by the coroner. Yeah. And so Anne and I were going to go do that. And then the police called and said that wouldn't be necessary. And it was like, okay, great. I mean, great, but one thing that we didn't have to do. And then later on that day, the coroner called me and said that I didn't need to, I come and physically identify Matt, but could I answer some questions? Did he have scars, or were there some characteristics that I could give him that would confirm that that was my son? And I just remember he had a couple scars. He had a birthmark. I was able to do that. And I just told the guy, I remember saying, that's my son. I just know it's my son. And Anne had asked me to try to see if we could get Matt's brain sent to the brain bank. And I remember saying to him that I wanted that. And he told me, oh, I'm sorry, sir. There's just too much damage. There'd be too much damage. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that at that point that there wasn't too much damage. It wasn't until after the fact. Actually, it was when I went to the huddle that I realized that they really don't need the entire brain. They just need a small portion of it to test or to analyze. And that's a regret that I feel bad that we weren't able to get 100% confirmation that Matt actually had CTE. But Ann and I both are convinced that Matt did. And that's what led to this. I just can't say I have proof. But I know inside, and I know Ann does too, that, Matt was probably in the early stages of CTE. And
or could have even been in stage 2, stage 3. It just
exactly. I again, I'm not I'm not medical. I and at this point, I don't think it really matters what stage it was in, but we are convinced that that's what led to this. And that's why when we go to the huddle or attending the huddle, everyone there gets it,
it does feel like one big hug and happy family when you're there. I mean, I felt so positive and happy about where the CTE research was going after I left there last year, and I'm really looking forward to next year. We'll have to put in our notes what the CLF family huddle is so that everybody knows. But yeah.
No, I agree. And really, I shouldn't laugh here. I'm trying to laugh my way out of crying, I guess. But I remember when Ann told me that we were going to be going to the CLF huddle, and I was like, I don't want to be doing, I don't want to go. Inside I didn't tell her that out loud, but I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be doing this. And so all along I was kind of resisting a little bit. I didn't resist going, but in the back of my mind, I guess I didn't realize it was going to be quite as good as it was. And I was really pleasantly surprised. And it didn't take long. Yeah, we sat down, and within a few minutes, I realized, wow, this is where God wanted me to be on that particular day. And truly it helped me a lot.
Thank you so much, Bill, for sharing everything, for sharing your story.
Following on from Trisha, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I think this is our first story where we've spoken to someone who's lost someone who's so young. So I think it's really important for our listeners to realize how vast CTE can affect so many different people at so many different stages of life, and the importance of really looking after our brains from the get-go, really. So I'm sure all of our listeners will appreciate this, and I'm so glad that the huddles was so informative for you and supportive, and I know that's what the CLF set out to do. So we both hope to see you there next year, you and Anne. But thank you so much again. We do really appreciate it.
Well, thank both of you. As I said before, I truly appreciate the perspective that you're moving towards trying to help family members and sharing our story. And I thank you very much.
Yeah, and reach out if you and Anne or if Anne ever wants to come on and tell her story, or anybody else, or please let us know, because we just want the platform for people to be able to tell their story uninterrupted as much as possible.
Well, thank you so much. Really, when Anne asked me to do this, I was like, what do I say? How do I do it? And so thank you for letting me just kind of spew out thoughts.
Well, thank you, Bill. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will definitely see you next year, right?
Yes, we look forward to seeing you.
All
Right.
right.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
Georgia. I'll
See
talk
you
to you
later.
later, Georgia.
Yeah. See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.